Gavin Newsom poking around. He's got some Florida envy, poking around down in Florida saying move to California from Florida. I've
been seeing this video. This ad.
Yeah, I would love to place bets on, what the numbers are here of how many Floridians are going to say, yeah, send me to the place where the major cities have a special app to help you avoid stepping in human poop or on needles, because that's a real thing in San Francisco, which, as we've said, should be the most beautiful city probably in America.
Such a jewel.
It's an amazing city. They have ruined it. California was an amazing state. You and I grew up in the 90s in America. California was the promised land.
Yes.
California gave us Ronald Reagan. People forget this. California was a Republican state solidly in presidential elections until about the mid-90s and massive illegal immigration. And anyway, there's a lot to talk about there. If someone offered you a swap for your house, double its value, but in Santa Monica in California, would you go for it? Double the value of your current house, but you have to live in Santa Monica, California.
To leave Nashville?
Yes. No. I'm talking about Florida. The Florida.
Yeah,
house.
even in Florida, I would not. No, I wouldn't take it.
I ask because this is what people all across America are looking at right now, kind of in reverse. Cheaper housing, better housing for them in the red states. Wall Street Journal has a big piece out today that really goes into the numbers. Red states are winning the post-pandemic economy. And we've been talking about this all along. Of course, states that look at the reality of what we can and can't do against COVID. The truth all along was that basically COVID was just going to rip through the country, and you try to protect seniors, get them the care you can, get them shots, because for them, given higher risk, fine, shots should be their choice, but everything else was a total waste. Everything else was a total, and actually worse than a waste. Lockdowns made everything worse. But now we're seeing the economic reality of this play out. Inflation, of course, very high because of all the just unprecedented spending that was going on. But at a state-to-state level, the pandemic, as the Journal says here, has changed the geography of the American economy. Short version of this. We should dive into this, Clay, because now we're seeing the emergence, and put aside presidential aspirations for a second, the emergence of two state leader titans in their respective camps. I know people say, don't call Gavin Newsom a titan. Well, he's a slimy, disingenuous titan, but he's a big deal in Democrat circles. We've got Ron DeSantis. It's like choose your champion. Ron DeSantis, the Republican in Florida, Gavin Newsom in California. We'll dive into this in a second because Newsom's trying to pick a fight, Unlike Buck on vacation in Nashville, I'm not even trying to pick a fight. Newsom is, and we'll get there, Newsom is trying to pick a fight with Ron DeSantis. But here's the basic numbers, Clay. I just wanted to, hear, because you're a long time. You were born and raised Nashvilleian.
I'm a red state guy.
And you're a red state guy through and through. So I've witnessed this transformation from the perspective of a state that has hemorrhaged people. You've witnessed the opposite effect. Guess what, everybody? The three states that have lost the most people are, anyone want to guess? Pretty much some of the most Democratic states, and really the Democrat stronghold states, New York, Illinois, California.
Yep.
The states that have gotten the most residents are, drum roll, Florida, Texas, we love Texas, and North Carolina, where I was just over this past weekend. You've had 46 million people move in the period of the pandemic through February of 2021, Clay. Started at the beginning of the pandemic. 46 million people have moved. And what we're seeing is that this is not a temporary phenomenon. This is a change in where people want to live, raise their families, and how they want to be governed.
Buck, 46 million, let's put that in context. 330-ish million people who live in the United States. We're talking about roughly 15% of Americans have relocated since COVID started. And overwhelmingly, they've moved to red states. I had someone really smart in the financial industry text me the other day, and he said, I don't see how we're not moving towards two different countries. Not somebody who's like a crazy, I'm trying to draw attention to myself, outlandish speaker. Someone privately texted me and said, I feel like we're almost to the point now, and I think that 46 million is a part of this, where if you live in a blue state, you have to just say, peace out, I'm moving to a red state. And flip side, if you're a super blue person and you find yourself living in a red state, peace out, I'm moving to. Red is getting redder and blue is getting bluer in virtually every political context. And how does that play itself out is such an incredibly difficult question to answer.
I just wish I had borrowed money from distant relatives to like buy real estate in Nashville and different, San Antonio and places like 10 years ago, because my gosh, it has just been a
to
crazy
your point,
rise.
When I went away to college, and I told people I went away to college in Washington D.C. It was all East Coast kids who went there. When I told people I was from Tennessee, they were like, "Do you have running water there?" This is like 2000, right? Late 90s. It was as if I lived in a cultural backwater.
Did you hide your banjo from them at least? For the
I
first
had to
few months?
hide the banjo. I had to be like, man, these moving stairs are unbelievable. I'd never seen an escalator before. So now when I started Outkick in 2011, everybody told me, hey, if you're going to run a media company, you have to move to New York and L.A. Now everybody is moving to where I live in Tennessee, and you look around Nashville, the Daily Wire is there, Parler is there. Every media company, it feels like, iHeart's got one of their main studios, our bosses, right downtown in Nashville. Everybody, it feels like, is moving to Florida, Texas, Tennessee, the places they all told us, hey, you can't live there and make a living in media.
Those are places that could rely on, and this goes to the heart, I think, of what we're seeing. There was a time when if you wanted to have certain kinds of jobs or work for certain companies, you had to be there. Now, there's still some truth to it. The pandemic and remote work hasn't entirely changed it, but this Wall Street Journal piece does go into how 30% of workers they surveyed are going to be in some kind of a hybrid model, which certainly means much bigger commute is way more doable, right? If you're going to go into work once or twice a week, maybe you drive an hour and a half, 2 hours both ways. You don't really care if you have 2 or 3 days where you're not commuting at all. But even beyond that, now if you can work remotely for some of the entertainment industry, for investment banking and financial services, for media, news media, I mean, all these things, it changes people's concepts of where, and that's New York City used to basically have this captive audience of, do you want to work at the most elite finance institutions?
You
right?
have to be here.
You had to be in New York City, right? You had to be here. You want to work at Goldman Sachs? It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to work remote from Fiji and work for Goldman. Now these things are changing, but so that's a big part of it. California is a place that I think is just going to continue to hemorrhage residents. They've lost more residents than any other individual state. Gavin Newsom is annoyed about this and living in, I think, a delusion. You remember that thing, Clay, when he was like, what's going on here? When they had all the trains with the trash everywhere from the thefts going on.
As if he were surprised
and he
that it
showed
was
up
actually
with like
going
his
on.
Hands on his hips. This is outrageous. Who's in charge here? It's like, you're in charge, jackass.
Yeah, you created this.
But here we go. We have Gavin Newsom picking a fight with our buddy Ronnie D down in Florida, the governor of Florida. Play clip 14.
It's Independence Day, so let's talk about what's going on in America. Freedom, it's under attack in your state. Your Republican leaders, they're banning books, making it harder to vote, restricting speech in classrooms, even criminalizing women and doctors. I urge all of you living in Florida to join the fight, or join us in California, where we still believe in freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom to choose, freedom from hate, and the freedom to love. Don't let them take your freedom.
I mean, there's so much here, Clay.
There's no one making that move.
California is the most anti-freedom authoritarian state in the entire country. Start with that. California is where your restaurant could shut down and you could go bankrupt because you couldn't use the outdoor dining you had set up by their own rules when they changed their minds. But if you were doing craft services for a major movie, like, that's important. So that's allowed to continue with hundreds of people gathered together, eating and being in line. It is such a ridiculous pitch. But look, I mean, you could probably run this in Asheville and get some of the blue-haired, there was a lot of, What is this when people put the thing? It's like
the big earring hoop.
No, it's not it's a thing that goes kind of in the earlobe.
Right.
I don't know what that's.
I don't know what that's called, but
there
I've
was
seen
a lot
it
of
a lot
in Asheville. Anyway, they may move to California. Is the point?
The cluelessness here. California filled in skate parks with sand to keep kids from being able to skateboard. They arrested a paddleboarder in the middle of the ocean. The cluelessness, and I'm down in Florida, so watching this, I think it's also worth pointing out, Buck, in addition to those 46 million people who moved, who's moving? The people who are leaving New York, Illinois, and California are overwhelmingly the highest earners because they're more likely to be able to work remotely, right? Because if you work in a bar, let's say, it's not like your job can suddenly go remote, which is why lockdowns overwhelmingly hurt people who need to live paycheck to paycheck the most. But for many people, it was effectively an experiment. Hey, maybe I don't need to be in Chicago anymore. Hey, maybe I don't need to be in New York City or LA. I can buy a cheaper house in a state with no state income tax, which is huge. 16% difference just in income in California versus Florida.
And I mean, Gavin Newsom is delusional because by every metric, if you were to line this up, did you ever play the Street Fighter video game? You know, in the arcades?
Of course.
Wasn't that amazing? Yeah.
Finish him.
I was like
Kombat.
Guile, the guy with like the blonde, not like a mohawk. He was like a Marine or something. Anyway, Street Fighter, for those of you who don't know, was a video game.
Old school. I was thinking Mortal Kombat when I said finish him. That was Mortal Kombat.
If we had DeSantis on one side and Gavin Newsom on the other of the Street Fighter video game, it would not be a close contest, friends. There'd be lots of hurricane kicks, and Gavin Newsom would be down for the count. You look at the actual data economically, Florida is about to have a record budget surplus.
Yep.
Florida has so much money coming into the state, magically without a state income tax, everybody, that they're setting up huge rainy day funds to protect state institutions and state governance agencies, et cetera, basically, schools, et cetera, so that they're good to go even if there is a cyclical downturn for Florida in the future. California is hemorrhaging people, okay? They're losing. So we've already run the experiment. California is losing on this one. Florida has won, and it just goes to show you it's like they're living in a fantasy land. They're living in La La Land out in L.A.
Well, yes, and this is also perfect example. If truly California was doing better than Florida, markets would reflect that everybody would be moving to California, which people did. California gained population. I believe I'm correct in this, Buck. Every year from 1850, so look it up. I believe they became a state in California in 1850, all the way to 2020. So 220 years or 170 years, or 170, I think, where they only gained population, and they started losing in 2020. And a lot of those people are moving to Florida. They're voting with their feet by moving to Florida, which is why Florida is now the capital of the Republican Party. California is becoming more blue. And Gavin Newsom versus Ron DeSantis, not a crazy idea for what 2024's presidential election could end up being.
It's called a plug, this form of jewelry that I'd never heard.
In the earlobe thing?
An ear plug or ear spool. I had to look this up. Yes. It is common in downtown Nashville. I was unfamiliar with this.
Yeah, I've seen it. I had no idea what it was called. I'm not going to be adding earplug to my fashion repertoire anytime soon.